The KD and Draymond back and forth has been a very, very, very interesting one because this all started. Kevin Durant was on Starting Five, the Netflix show, and made a take about, offense versus defense. And he's had this sentiment before about how offense is just way more valuable than defense. Like, way more valuable.
You have to score baskets if you want to win a championship. Playing defense, we can get any one of y'all in here to bend your legs, not touch the basketball, slide left and right, and contest the shot. That's easy. But when we're talking about winning at a high level against the best of the best, you cannot just do that and win a basketball game. You gotta make shots.
Here's my opinion on this. Especially from an individual standpoint, yes, offense matters more than defense. Offensively, who you are as a player, your ability to dictate what's happening on the floor, especially on a possession-to-possession basis, as an individual, you will have more input on the offense than you will have defensively. Especially in today's schemes, zones, you're able to really hide certain players defensively so you don't have to put them too much in action. So from an individual standpoint, without a doubt, you're more impactful on the offensive side of the floor than defensively, just because most offensive weapons will have some type of input on what happens offensively every single possession. Right? Now, from a team perspective, I think it's much closer. But if you still want to argue that offense is more valuable than defense, I really have no problem with that. I would acknowledge, however, that there has never been a team to win a championship that had a subpar defense, especially in the playoffs in NBA history, or at least as far as I am aware. I think the two or three teams that have won, they had a bad regular season defense. The 0-1 Lakers, I believe, the Denver Nuggets a few years ago, they had bad regular season defenses, but in the playoffs, their defense got better and it was no longer an average or a subpar defense, right? So you can certainly argue that. In terms of defense, there's never been a team to win a championship that had a subpar defense or bad defense and won. Even though there's been a lot of really, really great offensive teams that have posted crazy offensive numbers, such as the 07, 06, 05, those mid-2000 Suns teams, offense through the wazoo, but they never really won because of their defense. They never really won because of their defense. But then on the flip side, there actually has been a team to win a championship that was a subpar offensive team, but an all-time great defensive unit, and of course, that's the Detroit Pistons. Right? So there actually is an example of a bad offensive team winning, but not an example of a bad defensive team, at least in the playoffs winning, or at least for as far as I am aware. With that being said, though, my problem really isn't this idea or this take about offense is more important than defense. If that's how you feel, that's fine. And Kevin Durant is a more offensive-leaning player, so of course he's going to feel that way. My biggest gripe behind that is just saying it's easy to find players to bend their knees, move their feet, and contest shots. I think that's actually extremely disrespectful to not only defense at large, but some of the teammates that you have played with that aided you in winning, especially in moments, in series, in games, in quarters, where you weren't that great offensively, where your offense fell the fuck off the face of the planet, and yet y'all were still competitive because of the defensive players that were surrounding you that were quote-unquote easy to pull off. You played with Andre Roberson, you played with Serge Ibaka, you then went to go play with Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, and Andrew Bogut, I believe. And the irony of it all is that now you're put in another position to be hyper successful, not because the Rockets are this amazing offensive unit, but because of their upside defensively that not only catapulted them to the second seed last year, but again is a huge catalyst to why many people believe that you all can compete at a high level. It's because of the defense at large, and then they believe that you, even at an advanced age, can provide just enough offense to kind of help them navigate through certain series. I don't believe that. I think y'all are still going to lose because offensively, y'all are not where y'all need to be. But at the end of the day, I just think it's disrespectful to kind of disregard that it's easy to play championship caliber defense. I think that is grossly disrespectful. Very, very, very much so disrespectful. And I guess I'm not the only one who believes that either. Draymond fires back at Kevin Durant's claims that offense wins championships. Draymond, those who don't believe defense is as valuable as it is, they simply just don't win. I don't think anyone ever really been hella bent on caring about the opinion of those who don't win, because your opinion equals zero. Reporter, so I hear you, but Kevin has won. Draymond, he won here, and the defense was... reporter, it was incredible. Draymond, absolutely. To rebuttal to that, Kevin then fired back and said, and the offense was also incredible, to be fair. It was also incredible. But to actually further the point with Draymond, after KD left, after Klay Thompson was hurt, and the offense fell off and had to overly depend on Curry and wasn't incredible anymore, they still went on to win a championship without you niggas. So that's the crazy part, that even after the offense fell off, Draymond kind of provided further evidence that, bro, we didn't need you to play at a ridiculous high level offensively for us to win. Let's take it even further. Even in their first championship, offensively in the regular season, it was amazing. Second best offense, but number one ranked defense. When they were in the Cavs series, they had an offensive rating of 111.6. When they were in the Cavs series, their offensive rating dropped all the way to 105, 106. They won, however, even though offensively, Klay Thompson fell off, Draymond fell off, Harrison Barnes fell off. Even with all these players playing worse, they won because they held the Cavaliers offense to a 98 offensive rating. Like their defense is what won them the games. Overall, offensively, the team, they weren't performing that well offensively at all, and they still end up winning. Then if you go to the next season, to be fair, 2017, defense still amazing. 2018, defense falls off a bit, but does pick up in the regular season. And then we get all the way to obviously 2022, where they win again, and they have the number one ranked defense, and the offense is a below average offense. It's a below average offense. And everybody gets replaced with like worse offensive players, and they still win. So Draymond does have a point there. Now, everybody wants to make their point. People always miss the point. KD never said that defense isn't as valuable or as important as offense. He just said scoring is the name of the game and the most important thing. That doesn't mean defense isn't as important as offense. Pay more attention. He didn't say that, but he certainly implied it when he made claims that it's easy to find players to bend their knees and move their feet and contest shots. That's like me saying it's easy to find players to knock down threes. Like that's like me saying that as well. Like it's especially in today's league, it's extremely easy to find players to put the ball in the basket with the amount of offensive players in the league. You could actually argue, because how difficult it may be to find players who can defend multiple positions, move their feet, stay in front of players, especially in a league that's more offensive leaning, that it inherently would make defense more valuable because it's hard to find those things. Even last year with OKC, when Shea wasn't knocking down his threes, when the rest of the team weren't knocking down their threes either, bro, they won off of the back of their defense still. Offensively, OKC fell off the face of the planet, but what didn't fall off was their defense. Their defense is the one that sustained. So we can go back and forth about which one's more valuable and which one is not. And I heard someone make this corny ass remark like, oh man, have you heard this stat that you win 100% of your games if you score more points than the opponent? That's true. But there's also another stat that you win 100% of your games if you hold your opponent to fewer points than you score as well. So there's that as well. Like it goes hand in hand. I just don't like this idea that like it's easy. Like saying it's easy is crazy, especially when you've been around defensive oriented players your entire career, especially when the times in which Kevin Durant has had the most or the greatest opportunity to win is when he was on defensive oriented rosters. Every single time. 2012 is a really good defensive team. Actually, I think 2012, OKC fringe top 10 defense, and if I'm not mistaken, in the playoffs they were actually even better defensively. 107 defensive rating, bro. Jesus Christ, bro. Outside of these other three teams that got knocked out in the first round, they had the second best defense. Wait, am I tripping? Oh no, they actually was at the bottom defensively. Sheesh. They still made it though. That's tough. Shout out to them actually. They made it all the way to the finals, but they did end up losing. I ain't gonna lie, your defense a little better. You might have been able to win these games. Damn, that is tough. If their defense was better, they might have actually been able to win this series. That is tough. Oh my God, no way. Nigga, Miami offensive rating was 114 and their offensive rating in the, oh my days, KD. Oh no, KD. You're telling me the other time you got to the finals you lost because your defense allowed a Miami's offense go from 106 to near 114? You're telling me your defense allowed a pretty good offense to reach historic heights? Oh no. See, they had a 108 offensive rating in the playoffs against Boston, a 105, 106 offensive rating against the Pacers. Nigga, they had a great offense because of only two series, and it was against the Knicks and the Thunder. Oh The teams that was closest to beating Miami were worse offensive teams than you. The Pacers, they were actually really good but they were still worse because the Thunder were second. So it was the Pacers that were worse, and Boston was definitely worse. Yeah, Boston was one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA, and they had the number 1 ranked defense, and they get, oh no, KD. I was trying to help this nigga out. Oh no. Nah, that's tough. That's tough. The team that was actually the closest to beating Miami that year was a bottom 3 or 4 offensive team that had the best defense in the league. That was a team that actually came close to beating Miami. Man, KD. I don't even know what to tell you, brother. Look, at the end of the day, I've done this several different times, and I'm not going to be nasty like Jacob, the Clipper fan here, where he's like talking about defense and all that other stuff, and like he's taking moments out of context. I'm not going to do that, but I'm not going to sit here and make it seem like playing defense is just like, oh man, it's easy to just bend your knees, find people to bend their knees and stay in front of people. I'm not going to do that either. If we're going to keep it a beam with each other, KD. I actually thought that the 2012 Thunder were a better defensive team than that, but come to find out, bro, like the team that actually got the closest to beating Miami was a number 1 ranked defensive team that was at the bottom of offense. They got closer to beating Miami than y'all did, bro. And part of the reason why the Heat end up winning so convincingly, well, they won in 5, but some of those games were close, but the reason why they beat y'all in 5 games is because your defense allowed their offense to translate into an all-time offense. 10 points better than average, than league average. Fuck, bro. You know what's so funny too? It now kind of illuminates why Kevin Durant makes the personnel decisions he's made in his career, where I want to go play with Kyrie Irving, and then I also want to trade away all of the personnel that we have, the glue guys, the defensive oriented pieces. I want to trade all those pieces away for James Harden also, even though we were fine, we were good enough to where we were at. And then after, because if I'm not mistaken, I think Brooklyn was still one of the better offensive teams that last year that him and Kyrie were there. Yeah, Brooklyn was actually one of the better offensive teams, but they were really bad defensively. And so then we're going to go into a series where I want to say Boston wasn't that far offensively, but they were just they were the second best defense in the league, and we don't get a fucking game off because our defense is so bad it allowed the Celtics to have an offensive rating of 121, bro. And then to know that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, even Horford in them, but those two had really great moments in this series. To know that later on, this exact same team, they went up against the Milwaukee Bucks. Then they went up against the Miami Heat. And Miami, a defensive-oriented team. Those two teams took them further, even though your team was, in theory, a better offensive team. And then they end up losing to the Golden State Warriors, a fucking defensive-oriented team. That's tough. Even Miami got close to beating them, and Miami was just a defensive-oriented team. And then for the nigga to then join another defensive-oriented team, chat, he then joined another defensive-oriented team.